So I'll start this video off by saying that I've owned every Nintendo console that has been released since around 2001. So from the handheld line, this would start at the Game Boy Advance, and from the home console line, this would probably start around the Nintendo GameCube. Although I don't have all of them now, I have managed to keep a hold of quite a few. Now the reason I wanted to cover this is because I've always been a big fan of Nintendo. Like, I'll be honest, it was a lot more when I was younger, but there's a lot of things in the space right now that make me feel incredibly uneasy with the company and the things that they're doing. I'm not saying that the company is evil or anything. I mean, there are some companies that are an awful lot worse. But right now, I just don't see them being where they want to be as a hardware company, and it's really unsettling, considering their time in the space. As most people are aware, there are three main competitors in the gaming world when it comes to hardware and the entire console wars debacle. This is Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Now, Nintendo claim to be completely out of the race as they mainly focus on selling their own IPs, which is completely fine, but when you're looking at the kind of hardware the other guys are pumping out, it really does seem a little bit odd. So you have the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, which are again pumping out some major power, which is very competitive against the pricing range for even those who are PC gamers. And then you have the Nintendo Switch. So the Switch launched in 2017 having around the same power as the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, which at the time was a generation behind. And right now they've released two different revisions and a new console. So this is the extended battery, the OLED version, and the Switch Lite, and yet the hardware limitations are still the exact same, meaning this hardware is currently 2 generations behind. Now don't get me wrong, I love my Switch, and my main issue with Nintendo isn't actually the hardware, but it's something that is definitely worth noting. I've had multiple replacement Joy-Cons because of drift and basically just refuse to play online because of how terrible the Wi-Fi connection is on their consoles. But there's a lot of things that Nintendo have done as far as their actual software goes that gives me no end of frustration. So let's start off by talking about the online services. Now, I live in the UK, so all the pricing will be done in the Great British Pound, so I'm sorry about that. But it's the cheapest online service by far with the cheapest package, which is £17.99 a year. Compared to other gaming companies like Xbox and PlayStation, both of these are around 50 quid for a year. But this also is with a great reason. It's because it's terrible. When you manage to actually get online, half the time you just get disconnected, there's no embedded voice chat, there's no messaging service. I'm aware that there's an app on the phone. I just thought that this was something that really should have been included on the actual console, and the only thing that really made it worth it was the emulator. And that being said, they now do a family package as well, which is £31.49, which allows up to 4 accounts on the same Switch to be included in the online deal, which is something that no other competitor does offer. Obviously, if the online service was better, I would consider this a massive bonus, but as it stands, it's not really worth it anyway. And that brings us on to the second package that they offer, Nintendo Online plus expansion passes. So this costs the same amount as the base PlayStation Plus and the base Xbox Live Gold. What more do you get for that extra £20 a year? It's the same shoddy mechanics that's in the basic package, alongside the Animal Crossing expansion, Mario Kart 8 maps, which are from the previous games by the way, they haven't just made new ones. And they've also said that they're going to be adding more DLCs, but who knows how long that's actually going to take. You also get a broken emulator for the Sega Mega Drive and the Nintendo 64. As this is a company focusing on their own IPs, I think that adding the emulators is a great idea, but the main thing that irritates me with this is there's such a lack of games available for emulation. Like, this wouldn't be such an issue if it wasn't all the issues that people have had trying to emulate games before, or just ended up getting cease and desist letters from the company. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand the idea of this. You haven't paid for a product, so you shouldn't be able to play it, which is completely fair enough. But you also don't allow people to buy these older games to replay in the present day. So take a look at the Wii. All the games that are discontinued, they've completely shut down the store, so there's now no way for you to actually purchase these games online. Take the Game Boy for example. These games are a hot commodity and they're so hard to get a hold of. If Nintendo were to just sell the ROMs to make these games available to play, then really it would become so much easier for people to replay these old games, and they wouldn't need to be charging ridiculous prices for their online to have bad emulators of games that no one really wanted to play anyway. Like, I understand that the Nintendo Switch is technically a home console because you can dock it, but primarily it is a handheld. Like, the Switch Lite is completely handheld anyway, and yet they don't have an emulator for Game Boy games. I know they're currently working on it, but I can understand that the reason for not emulating the DS, because they only have one screen on the Switch, and, you know, it is a touchscreen, so I guess it could be done if they just split it in the middle, but I doubt it would look great. So I kind of understand it, but it's still one of those things that just really irritates me. My biggest recommendation for people that ask me if they should buy a Nintendo Switch over a different console is just, I will ask them what games they play first. Because the truth is, if you do like Nintendo games, you should buy a Nintendo Switch. But if you like other games, you should 100% buy any other console. Nintendo have done a great job at establishing their IPs, and some of the games are incredible. Take a look at Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's stunning, and it plays incredibly, and it is one of the top rated games on the Nintendo Switch. Pokemon is an incredible franchise that has achieved so much in the quarter century that it's been around, and the new Legends Arceus game is truly stunning, and I hope that these kind of things will carry on into the new mainline Pokemon games as well. But most other things that you can play on the Switch are honestly just better being played somewhere else. One of my biggest gripes is the price point of a lot of these games. Even if you were to go back to the 3DS era of games, if I were to go and try and buy myself Pokemon Omega Ruby for the 3DS, it's still going to cost me around 40-50 quid. For a game that's nearly a decade old. This is nuts to see. I completely understand the business model. They're the only ones that have it, so really it makes it the most sense that they're just going to be the ones who sell it and make the profit, but it just seems very anti-consumer. And it's honestly nuts for me to see this late on that people aren't selling the games for cheaper when it's like 5 generations behind. Take a look at some of the original games that the Switch has to offer. Do you know how many of these are just Wii U games that have been remastered or sometimes even just simply ported over without any real care or affection added to them? Not only are the majority of their own games just ports, but you still have to pay the full price on them, and to be honest, it almost seems like it isn't really worth it. This could have all been avoided. In the same instance as the ROM situation, take a look at how Xbox and PlayStation run their stores. If you buy a game, it's linked to an account. That game will stay with you on your account regardless of the changing console or generation. The 3DS shop, the Wii shop, and even the Wii U shop are all separate entities from one another. Meaning, whatever you buy on that shop, as soon as it shuts down, which we have seen already with the Wii, it does happen, these games are just gone forever. Maybe just creating one localized store would be better off for allowing people to preserve their own online game library. But I can also understand the issues with the limitations of each piece of hardware, like a DS wouldn't be able to run a Wii game after all. But don't get me wrong, I'm a very positive person when it comes to video games. If you've watched any of the reviews, I can always find the good in the games, even if the general consensus is that the game is rubbish. But as a software developer, Nintendo are incredible. They make really good original games and they have a formula that just works. But as a hardware developer, right now, they're failing incredibly far behind. As far as customer service goes, being consumer friendly, they have so much more that they need to improve on. I have high hopes that in the next few years, Nintendo will be able to fix the mistakes that they've made over the last decade. But that could just be me being an optimist. If you've liked the video, throw a thumbs up down below, as it really does help us out with the old algorithm, and let me know in the comments what you think about Nintendo. Feel free to subscribe to stay in touch with the channel, and I hope you guys are doing well. Take it easy.